This is, so Juan and I are talking about designs for vision. We're going to go through the one-year vision designs that Juan has already done and just kind of talk through those, have a conversation about those. And then I'll be getting a first look at some of the 3-year vision ideas that Juan has had to build on those things. So I'm going to hand it over to Juan. Juan, you take it away.
Sure. So I'm going to share my screen. Step 2. All right, so here's the issue. Let's open the designs and okay, let's start with number 1, which is this one. All right, so
hey, before we get in design, can we back up just a minute? Let's look at real quick the issue and just some of the problems that we want to solve in the next year and how that informed the design.
Sure, yeah, good call. I was gonna kind of like talk about that on top of the design, but it makes more sense. All right, so yeah, we like the goal is to identify certain areas of work, right? Like things that we believe are gonna be fundamental in the next 3 years, but I think the idea here is to see what can we kind of like land in terms of the foundation that we gotta build, and that basically it's looking forward to the next year. So yeah, some of those areas, like the first one is hotspots in the code base. So we are pretty good right now when it comes to identifying load code coverage and load code quality. We also added accessibility, and we also have web performance, load performance. So we are great at proactively telling our customers when like things go wrong, right? But like what we don't have yet is holistically telling them, okay, like things seem to be going wrong in this particular area, and like this particular file seems to have a lot of trouble, or like this particular set of files have a lot of trouble. So that's one thing, you know, just like maybe there's one area of your project that needs more attention than other areas, you know, and the idea is to visualize that somehow and provide those insights to the right people so they can start taking some decisions around that. The second thing is,
so I would go even so far as to say that we don't necessarily tell you what's wrong, we just tell you what happened. So if there's errors, here's a bunch of errors. If it's really slow,
exactly.
Here's a load test that shows you it's really slow, but no context of how that's changed, really.
That's probably a better description of what's going on. Yeah, and I think that's where the opportunity lies, right? Like not even like showing that like hotspot, but like why is it a hotspot? You know, like we can like provide that reasoning of the problem, why it should be addressed, you know, because I think we're very passive about the things that we just bubble up for the customer, and like they should be able to understand how, like, what's the impact of fixing those things in their bottom line, right? So I think that's definitely important. Yeah, the second thing was identifying tests that are flaky, and just in general getting test insights, and that's another interesting one, because right now we provide all these like underlying infrastructure to run different test suites and run different test frameworks, and we are collecting the data of like, or like at least we're processing all the data of how the tests are doing. And I mean, there's a lot of value in just understanding that in the context of time, you know, like how many times does these particular tests like fail in the last 10 days or 14 days or 1 month or 2 months, you know. But even beyond that, just understanding like the nature of the whole project in that sense of what's flaky and what's not. Perhaps the whole suite is flaky, or, you know, perhaps there's just like one file that has all the flaky tests, you know, like if we can like provide different vectors of data and like allow people to start seeing how one thing relates to another, we might not necessarily like pinpoint those things to them, but if we show enough vectors of data, they might be able to figure out that pretty fast. So yeah, just like test insights in general, like how they're performing, how long it's the test stage taking in terms of execution time. I mean, even down the line, how much computing power are you spending on testing, right? Like at the end of the day, that's money that you're spending on these tests.
Do you want to jump into
Then,
design and just start talking through these there as well?
sure.
Yeah.
That's a great call.
I adding a little color. The flaky tests. I mean, I've seen in my experience. I'm sure Juan, you've seen, and we've heard from tons of customers, internal stakeholders as well. You end up with these suites where you have like 1 or 2 flaky tests that you'll run your pipeline. It'll take 45 minutes to get through, and 1 test failed, and you know that it'll pass if you rerun it, but then you have to rerun the whole thing, and it's 45 minutes. So I think you had a great idea the other day of, as we've built the infrastructure to identify or like mark a flaky test, then being able to grab all of those flaky tests that failed, or tests that a user has said, hey, these might be flaky, and just rerun those at the end of the existing pipeline. Because then if they all pass, you get to a green pipeline in a lot less time, ultimately saving wall clock time for a developer or runner time at the end of the day, if you're spinning those up in the cloud or if you're using the shared runners.
Totally. And yeah, just to add that, even like internally when with GitLab, it happens all the time that I make a contribution and the pipeline runs, and I feel like I have the feeling that something failed because of something that I did, and then I go and I check, and it's nothing about that. It's maybe like there was like a networking error or something. So if I retry the job, the most likely thing that's going to happen is that it's going to succeed. Whether or not that's flakiness, I mean, it's debatable, but I think like just the fact that like many times just retrying a job fixes the issue, indicates that like we should at the very least allow them, if not do what you said, which is like identifying all the tests that are failing, and then like as a new job run all those, at least rerun the job if it's failing. Like if the if the job with the flaky test fails because of that flaky test, I think we should give the customer the ability to retry the job because they know there's something flaky in that particular job, right? So now the problem is like the job could be huge, right? So like it could be that that's the largest part of the pipeline, so like that's not gonna achieve a lot in terms of efficiency, but I mean it's a start, I guess. So yeah, some of the things that James was saying, just talking on top of the design, like right away, the whole idea here is like assuming that you're a customer who has multiple projects and you want to get insights from all your projects in terms of code quality and test executions and in general, what's the behavior of your code base against your testing solutions. The whole idea here is to provide them that overall performance like metrics, and I put some. This is not set in stone, this is just part of the vision, but of course one thing that I put is the overall group testing coverage across all projects. How much is what's the average or the P90 better, and I'll talk a little bit about the why P90 and that or average, but what's kind of that number across all my projects, right? So if it's taking 15.2 minutes, how can we make that trend down or up? It's gonna save money, it's gonna save time, it's gonna make us more productive. Ultimately, I think that many of these things are signals that help people to rethink their testing in such a way that they keep shifting to the left, which I think it's the goal, So it happens many times that like your pipeline, your tests fail because of linting issues, for example. And I believe that like if we could provide, now I don't have that here in the designs, but if we could provide something like your pipelines are failing because of trivial things, like linting errors or unused classes or unused variables or whatever, we should be able to also pinpoint that and tell them like, you might have a problem here and you might want to shift more to the left and allow your developers to, or like create something so your developers are not using the pipelines to test what they should be testing on their IDs. But that just was like a parenthesis, random thought. So yeah, just in general, like all these things that you see are metrics across all your projects. The code quality widget shows, this is basically based on code climate. So those are metrics that code climate provides currently, like the churn, the code complexity, duplication, maintainability. There's this thing called trivial checking, which I don't understand well. I included it because I think it's kind of interesting. I think it has to do a lot with how meaningful is the checking against the code base, and like if you're spending a lot of resources just because you changed a letter or something like that,
Yeah.
Or like a typo.
You've renamed 3 variables and added a comment. It's not a very meaningful check-in. Yeah. And then if I'm looking at this right, this sums up a lot of the data that we offer today across projects, roll it up to the group level, and then it looks like under that you have a table that starts to break down then within your group, here's your projects. We could even then, so this is kind of the 1 year vision of starting to roll all this up to the group, getting the data that we have, collecting it and starting to look at it over time. And then we could roll that up to the instance level for self-hosted. And that would be pretty awesome. So that you could start to look at, across all of my groups, how are things looking?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Cool. And then do you have, I think if I remember right, you had some graphs underneath the table. So a further breakdown so you can start to see how these things are changing over time. Nice.
Totally. Yeah. So, and I think the idea here is to think about these graphs as like a lens to see your data, right? So the idea here is you have a lot of things like test coverage, and you have things like duration of the CI/CD testing jobs, but it's not only showing them, but being able to plot one project against another, just so you can see if it's your whole org, the one that it's trending up or down. Or, maybe there's some efficiencies that you can get from project A to project B. Maybe they're pretty similar, and project A is doing better. Perhaps project A is, this is not captured in the design, that it could be something that we find out as we validate more with customers. But I even thought about, testing data again between environments. So how's my testing data in staging? How's my testing data in pre-prod? Once and perhaps for some reason, like one is more performant than the other. And you might want to identify why is that. Maybe you're not running certain suites. Maybe you're skipping certain things, or maybe there's many things that. And by the way, it's so important to be opinionated in terms of like the solutions, but not the data or like the insights that they're gonna get from this. So I think that the importance is to create something that allows them to identify whatever they need to identify and then go and solve the problem. So I think that has been the goal with these things.
So thinking about environments, I think I had a really interesting conversation with Jason yesterday about running things like doing your smoke tests in production, running your performance testing in production, whether it's browser performance or load testing even in production, and then using that as your baseline against your test environments, because those environments never match, the behavior never matches, and the data never matches, like amongst other things. There's configuration drift and all sorts of other problems that you're going to have between production and pre-prod, where you're developing and testing stuff. But to use then that as kind of a baseline and see like, what does this code look like? How many of the tests passed in our pre-prod environments or as part of our development stage? How many of those tests actually pass in production? Like, do we have funky data out in prod that mean these tests never actually pass? So anytime we slow down to fix them in our development cycle, it's just a waste of time because they're not going to pass in production anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that might be an interesting like as we transition into our talking about 3-year vision, like starting to think about that of showing this kind of data that we can start to expose in the 1 year against production level data as we get closer to 3 years out.
Yeah, no,
Cool.
that's a great point, and I think you're right about that. The fact that the test is failing, it's not failing in staging, doesn't mean that the actual code that it's being tested against, it's not gonna fail in production. And it does happen that it, like production data, it's wildly more complex than, I mean, unless you have like something that you're really like testing with somehow with production data, maybe you are gonna get that same results in your staging, but that's unlikely, right? Like not even,
Yeah.
Most tests are written with mock data, and it's just up to the developer to include like all the cases.
Yep.
But there's always gonna be something that they're not thinking about, right? So yeah, that's an interesting one.
Let's jump ahead into the 3-year stuff, just for the rest of the time. I'm going to link into this video. Did you put your discussion of the 1 year out on Unfiltered, or is that link somewhere else?
I did put it in the. You mean in the verify one? You mean?
You linked to it in the issue, I think. I can. Either way, I will put a link to Juan's great discussion because you walked through these mocks and kind of did a walkthrough already. I'll put that in so that you can talk through the rest of the mocks. But let's jump ahead to those last 3 where you started doing some ideation of kind of where I'm thinking about 3-year vision of going from that signal of there's problems here across your org or across your project. This is more of a signal within merge requests or pipelines of, hey, you have something wrong, and we might be able to fix it for you. So starting to push that further left. So some of that simple stuff you talked about getting fixed. So why don't you talk through these a little bit?
Sure. So one big area, like surface area for testing, is the MR, right? You have a merge request and you run the pipeline, and then something fails, and then on that summary widget we show you, okay, there's certain things that failed, and today we just show how many of the total tests that were run failed. There's so many other things that we could, in that first glance, tell the customer, right? So something that it's common is showing that test history inside of how many times, how many of those tests have failed more than once in the last 14 days. But as I was exploring this, another thing that came to my mind was, okay, there's gonna be also things that are potentially fixable in an automatic or semi-automatic way, you know, and many of those things I mentioned before are likely linting issues and that type of stuff, very small stuff. But the vision is that if you have those tests and we can identify correctly what type of issue was created from that test. For instance, this one doesn't follow the proper code styling conventions, right? That's something that you can. Usually, what will you do is that you go and then you go back to the file, and then you link the file, and then you push a new commit, and then you rerun the pipeline, and then this is fixed, you know. But there's no reason to do that if we could apply that from here, you know. So the goal here will be, because we know what's the issue, and we know that we just need to run whatever yarn prettier right or whatever command is the one that you need to write for linting. Then you could just go and fix error, and then what that will do is basically inject that, just basically write or like make that difference, that diff, and then rerun the pipeline with the diff. Like the details are also still on the air. It could be like very apply suggestion type of thing, you know. I don't know, like, or it could be like fix error and it's just magically fixed, you know. Then there's many other issues like that could be fixed in this way. We could identify the ones that are within the realm of possibilities. Of course, not everything is gonna be fixable this way. But I put another example of many other things that could happen here. For instance, we could identify when something is becoming flaky or seems to be flaky from our perspective. We're not claiming that it's flaky. We're just gonna tell you that this seems like a flaky test, you know, because of the data that we have been tracking of these tests, we have a feeling that it's a flaky test, right? So there's probably very, very little things that we could do about that in terms of, I mean, we cannot fix a flaky test because there's something else that we don't understand what's going on. But we could definitely shortcut you into start getting, start like fixing that somehow, right? So just having a call to action to create an issue, right? And what I did in this example is if you create an issue, then what will happen is that it takes you to the new issue form, and in the new issue form, like it's gonna have a pre-populated title that it's gonna say something like Flaky Test : the name of the test or whatever it's gonna be, but it already gives you a pre-populated idea of what the issue needs to be. And then it also auto-populates the form with the things that are important for you to start triaging things, like the test name, the suite, the test file, and even run data and links to the trace, you know, so you can just go and see if it's always failing because of the same reason. It gives you that issuable, that it's a place for people to go and discuss what's happening, right? And it could be more rich than this. And it doesn't need to be only issues. I mean, we know that test cases are coming as a new issuable. So it could be that we identify here an error that it's not contained with, or that doesn't seem to be a scope within the test suite. I mean, something's failing, but it's failing just at runtime because for whatever reason. And then we could pinpoint there, this failed, and you want to create a test case for these, you know? And I mean, those are the ideas that I had so far, but there's probably many other things that you could.
Well, I really like this because we can apply this kind of across the board. Accessibility comes to mind, browser performance comes to mind, where we know that there's like those reports come back with, this is what is wrong because you didn't match a style. We can start to say, and then apply that correct style or the correct formatting or do this thing that will fix that issue for you. And then as we start to kind of capture and say, in this file, this line or this kind of code fingerprint matched up with this violation type, and you created an issue and you fixed it. As we start to build a history of those, we can then use those to go back in and create more things that you can be fixed automatically. Like, oh, you had an issue, you had this violation in this similar looking bit of code, and here is the commit where it got fixed. What if we, you know, tried to insert that, or at least pointed you at it and say, issues like this have been fixed with these, you know, or violations like this have been fixed in these 5 issues in the same type of code. So at least it gives that developer a leg up on, oh, well, there's prior art. I can go, you know, instead of hunting it down myself, it's right there in the interface. I think we can apply that same kind of format and pattern to, I mean, almost all of our categories. Accessibility, browser performance, code quality comes to mind too, where you have like those violations and you have, you know, if you see a fix that fixes the code quality part of it, then you can probably apply that for you later.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, because another thing that can happen is that, of course, if we create an issue here, the whole idea is that next time that you see this error, we're not going to tell you to create an issue again, because that will be like, you will end up with duplicated issues for the same thing. The idea is that next time we will show you, hey, this seems to already have an issue where you're thinking about it, you know? So you could be any contributor, but you already know that someone is thinking about it, or you could just go and keep contributing because you keep seeing the error. But it creates the story around testing, like that narrative, that it's more cohesive and it's not just an error that you keep ignoring, or maybe one day you decide that you want to fix, you know? So
definitely reduces that cognitive load of like, this test is flaky, and I see it every 3rd time I run it, so I know it's flaky if you just see that issue there. And then we can, going back to what we looked at initially, we can start to bubble these up back to those first report type of views or dashboard type of views of, here's all the issues associated with the errors and how many you have. So as like a VP of tech, you can start to look at, how big is my tech debt? Like, how many flaky tests do I have? How many code quality violations do I have? How many issues do I have? And start to look at that along with some of the other analytics that we have of how long does it take us to close these things on average? Well, how
Totally.
many hours is it going to take us to kill this tech debt or to pay off this tech debt? So I think those
Totally.
are some interesting things we can start to pull together from around the application. Cool.
Yeah, no, I love that. Those were the 4 examples that I had, but you mentioned many others. And of course, now they mention accessibility. That's another one that it's a big one. Like many issues could be created just out of accessibility warnings or errors. So like that will be another one for sure.
Yeah, and I think that these mocks are great because it shows it in one example that's pretty concrete, but it's one that we can apply across the board. Like I said, it would be a really similar pattern, I think, of if we can fix it, we're going to try to get you to fix it right there in the widget. If we can't, we're going to let you make create an issue or mark something as flaky or repeat or ignore or whatever it might be. And we can play around with the behavior with some solution validation.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I mean, that really well covers a lot of those problems that we wanted to solve in the next year. And it starts to get at some of the things that we want to look at in the 3-year vision as well, of things like, I see all of these accessibility issues and I have no idea how to fix them. Maybe we can, start to apply some fixes for you. Same thing with, code quality or browser performance, even load testing. I think if we put these things out there and make them available to the open source community, and we can start to gather back that data of how these issues were fixed, we can then turn around and give that back to the open source community as well as customers.
Yeah,
here's how things have been
absolutely.
fixed 50,000 times. This bug has been fixed this way, or this code quality issue has been fixed this way. So it's a well vetted bit of data, potentially. We'll see.
Yeah, totally. No, I totally see what you're saying. Just creating that path from the error to the issue in the context of what you're testing makes a lot of sense. And I mean, many times, like when you Google something, you're gonna either find Stack Overflow question or a GitHub issue or something else, right?
Yep.
And this is something else that adds that broad idea of like maybe this should be more accessible in general terms for other people.
So you're thinking about, like, as people are Googling for issues in open source projects, they're finding GitLab issues instead of Stack Overflow questions or GitHub issues.
Yeah, that's how I see
Gotcha.
it. Because if we allow them to create this, because we see these tests a lot, because we kind of start tracking those errors a lot. We also have a good idea of how often that error is happening, right? In general, just across the board for open source issues or like open issues, Yeah, but what I'm thinking is that it's just simply the idea that creating an issue for something shouldn't be as hard, or like shouldn't have that much friction, and
yeah,
I
I think that's something that we can tackle in the next year and make part of our 1-year vision. I think where we get to 3-year vision, we talk about how do you take action against these things? How do you, improve overall test coverage? Can we do that with some AI and ML? Buzzword. I mean, just making these things easier for developers to, improve their code quality overall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, that was awesome. Thanks for taking time, Juan. We'll get this posted up to Unfiltered so that other people can watch the discussion and check out those cool designs.